Hi everyone. I'm really grateful to be speaking to Jane Kelly today, and she's going to share her testimony about the social services and how her heartbreaking story of her what has happened to her two little grandsons. Um, this is again just to expose what is happening in our so-called child protection services and how it can literally just happen to anyone. Nobody is safe from these. We're here to shine a light on what is going on and to really just say it could be you. This isn't just happening to bad parents. This is almost like a child trafficking service. So hi Jane, nice to speak to you.
Hello.
Thanks for coming on.
It's lovely to meet you at long last.
Yeah,
you're in my prayers daily, and we're both Christians, so we know
so
the Lord. Yeah.
Well, Jane, do you want to just first of all introduce yourself, tell people a little bit about yourself, what you do, that kind of thing, and who you are?
Yes. Hello everybody. Yes, I am a mother, a grandmother. I've been a nanny and a nursery nurse. All my life was working with children. And then I got married. Anyway, so I'll just start at the very, very beginning. I was adopted. I was adopted from the Mission of Hope, which is a Christian charity, still going under a different name in Croydon. So I'm a Londoner. And I was brought up to Preston by my wonderful Christian parents, who also adopted my brother, who was 2 years older than me. He passed away in 2018 of cancer, sadly, but we had precious 2 years together before he went. And we had a wonderful childhood, a house full of Christians and, non-Christians as well. My parents had a gift of hospitality, so we were always surrounded by teenagers that were at university and didn't have family around. My parents would invite them, and we were a really happy family. We both sort of went off the tracks a bit when we were teenagers, and I think as well as the usual sort of teenage rebellions, I think being adopted also had played a part for both of us, which we hadn't recognised at the time, but came out later on, realising that there is a separation problem, even if you're babies, you've been taken from a mother. And I read a book, and it's called The Primal Wound, which never really is healed. But I'll just say a little bit about my testimony, how God has healed it, and so when I was I'll go back to 14, and my rebellion. Well, it wasn't really, it was a church outing. A young man from the church had asked if we'd all like to go to a what was it called, sort of a show, one of these. They were all farmers, and help me out here, what's it called, a show where they off tractors and things, agricultural show.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
So off we all went, car full of us, and we went off to this show, and we came back, and one by one everybody was dropped off, and I was the last one that was going to be dropped off. And I was assaulted by this gentleman, young man in his 20s, and that was my first experience really of men. And it was very unpleasant. And then he dropped me off at home, and I couldn't tell anybody what had happened. And that sort of fed into my I'm worthless, I was not meant to be here. And that fed really many years of feeling that I was only meant for sort of wanting, really. I know it sounds bizarre, but it just changes everything when you are sexually assaulted. anyway, so I left home pretty quick. I was 17 and I wanted to run away, really. So I went to France and I was a nanny in France for a year and absolutely loved it. I loved looking after my first little boy, Olivier, that I looked after, and he was gorgeous, grown man now. It was many years ago. And I went to France, and then my job sort of ended because it was a season. Well, it wasn't seasonal, but I'd done 2 seasons, a summer season and a winter season. So I came home, and I pretty quickly got a job in Athens, working for a pharmaceutical company director who was very, very rich. Even though they were very, very rich, they were very, very quite unhappy as well, really. So it was quite a volatile home. But they disappeared sort of quite quickly, went to America and left me with the children. And I was thrown in at the deep end. But I met many nannies on the park because it was a very wealthy area. And I had a great friendships with the girls there, and we were all sort of in a gang because we were all foreign in a foreign country, and they were from all over the world, and they kept me sane all the time I was in Greece. They kept me sane. We never lost touch with each other, and I just loved being with them. And so any chance we got, any day off, we'd go to a taverna. Anyway, I met my first husband one of these nights out after the club. I mean, in Greece they start at 11 and they finish at 6. So we'd gone to get something to eat, and I met my first husband who'd just come back from Australia, and he was so handsome and he was so charming, and I just fell head over heels in love with him. And we were spent every minute of every day off. He would come down from the balcony waiting for me with his beautiful clothes on and his motorbike with my helmet ready for me. It was just love. I was just head over heels in love. And so we got married about 6 months later because it was Greece, and his parents were very orthodox. And I was living in their house. I stopped because we were meant to be going to Spetses to their summer house, and he came with a horse and carriage and his father because they don't have cars on Spetses. So it was very romantic because they were going off to another island, the family, and leaving me for about a month on my own. And I just had a little moped, and I was miles away from the main area, and I just felt I can't do this. I didn't want to be left on my own. And so he just came and rescued me from this quite an unhappy situation as well, with the father and the mother. They weren't very kind. And so off I went and got married. And probably about 2 months after we got married, his parents were professional musicians. So they'd gone to Germany at the time, and I'd walked into the bathroom and he was taking drugs in the bathroom. And I didn't know, had no idea. I'd never had any experience really, apart from a bit of weed, when you're a teenager. I had no idea about drugs and all this. And so, yeah, from there on, it all kind of went very downhill. But I loved him. And I thought I could.
What kind of drugs was he taking?
Oh, anything. It was heroin. It was anything, amphetamines. It was all sorts. Yeah. And I didn't know. He'd been to India and Australia, and I mean, I had no idea. I just believed everything, and they had a lot of money, and I think he'd been left alone a lot when he was young.
Yeah.
With his grandma, and he had separation problems himself. So I don't judge him. I don't judge anybody for what happened. And he did love me, but he just battled with drink and drugs the whole time I was with him. We had a space where he was okay, and I wanted a baby, and I thought when you're with an addict and you love them, you always think you can save them, and also with adopted children, you always have this sort of, you want to care for other people thing. And it's a very, very yeah, because you know the hurt and you want to rescue people. um, so anyway, so I stayed with him, and he went through rehab over and over, and he went through cold turkey over and over, and I had two boys. And it was while I was in England, because I had to have fertility treatment, and I fell pregnant, and very quickly I fell pregnant again. But the second pregnancy was a horrific time. I mean, he did abuse me, and I did cry out for help, but I had nobody, and I didn't tell my parents, and then my mum had a heart attack, and I looked after my mum. That was before the children.
How
And then I
long
met
ago was this? When did you have your children?
my sons are now 30 and 31.
Okay.
Yes. So this was 1987, when my mum passed away, and we went back to Greece because he was using again here. He'd gone to Blackpool, and he was in a terrible state. By the time I'd had Andy, my son, can't tell things. Yeah, he was in a bad state. So we went back to Greece and struggled on, and he became more and more violent, difficult. When he was drinking, he was worse than when he was taking heroin or anything else. And so in the end, my father died like 10 years after my mum died, and he'd left me some money and I could get out. But all the time I had my friends who really, we were really very close. I came back, and while the boys were growing up, I was telling them about Jesus. I was thinking, well, maybe God's rejected me, but he maybe, he will love my boys, And I had this awful, the devil had really got in there as, he doesn't love you anymore. You've failed. You've blown it. It was all that sort of thing. So I came home and I started fostering, which was wonderful. I just loved it, and the boys loved it, and we had some wonderful experiences of meeting wonderful adoptive parents, specifically one little baby who we had from day one, who her mother could not look after her at all. And I wouldn't ever think, we met her. I know that none of them were what's happening today.
Sure, yeah, they were actually taken from people who couldn't genuinely look after them.
Yes, and they were given, and I made sure, I was part of that process of finding good parents, and the social workers were very good at that.
Yes.
And it's not the experience that we've have now, so I've known the good and the bad. So I did a foster for about 6 years, and then something happened about another foster carer that I'd found out was abusing children, and it changed in that 6 years. And instead of getting rid of her, they sort of tried to push me out, because there was a number of them actually, not just the one. So so that ended. But at that time is when the Lord really, I mean, I was broken. I didn't want to finish fostering. I didn't understand why they were going to give me there was houses being built just around the corner, and they desperately wanted me to have a bigger house because they knew what a good job I was doing. And then suddenly it all stopped. Right. And I couldn't understand why, but I and at that point I was doing Bible studies online with a church in Motherwell in Scotland, a guy called David Simpson, and I was beginning to sort of question the things that I'd held in my heart they weren't true, and I was beginning to read my Bible and understand how things had happened, and and little things. But then the boys were teenagers, and I'd never been with men. I always felt very uncomfortable around men because of what had happened to me. And I had two other friends who were Christians, because I was going to church by that point, and with my friends. here in England. And they were like, oh, I pray that the Lord will bring me up. You know, they were both single mums, but love the Lord, you know, and oh, we'd love a lovely Christian man one day, you know. And I was like, never again. Never. I am not putting my trust in anybody. I said, if God wants me to have another husband, he'd have to zap me on the sofa next to me, because I am not looking. And then when this happened with the girls, and the boys by that point were teenagers, and it was good that I stopped fostering, because they needed me, you know, they really just needed me, you know. But as soon as my oldest son became a difficult teenager, like they all do it, he looks so much like his father, and every time I would just go, I was so fearful mother, that I couldn't be the strong mother that I saw my friends being, because I was so sort of, the fear within me of men was just so powerful that I wasn't, you know, I couldn't stand up. And one night my oldest son was being the A male in the house. I didn't have a man with me to, you know, shout him down, and I ran away. I got up, and this is what I used to do in Greece. I used to run. Before the children, obviously, but when I could, I used to escape when he was, you know, and lock myself in his parents' house, or run away, you know, and come back when I know he sobered up or whatever. So I just ran that night. It's the first time I'd ever run from another man again, and it was my son.
So how old were your sons at this point then?
14 and 13.
Okay.
And so I ran. I'd watched a programme about a week before, and it all seemed to sort of coincide, all this this programme had been a documentary about what happens when you get very cold, and it said, you know, that your body, you know, your mind goes and you don't even realise. So I just went down to the river, and I just thought, I can't go through all of this again if my son's going to be like aggressive and that, and I was so scared. And I stood on the bank of the river, and I cried out to God. I just wept, and I got in the river. And it was a very, very, we'd had flooding. It was March, April, and we'd had a lot of flooding. So it was quite full, and, you know, it would have flushed me away, I think, if I'd stayed there. And I looked up, and there was lambs and sheep. It was end of March, April, beginning of April. And I looked up, and I saw sheep and lambs and just by the side, and I just cried out, and something in me thought, you know, I'm the good shepherd, you know, and God was speaking to me in my spirit, in my soul. And lo and behold, as I was stood there, a quad bike comes up on the top of the hill opposite. And I look up, and it was the shepherd, it was the farmer. And as soon as the farmer came, all the sheep suddenly started, and there was one little lamb and its mother, and it was on the sort of embankment where the water had washed away, and it was low down by the river, so it had struggled up the hill to get up. And the mother was always sort of with the lamb, you know, and taking it up. And the Lord just ministered to me, the Holy Spirit, that in that moment, it was like all my doubts, all my fears, you know, I'd cried out to God, and he answered me. And I got out, and I don't even remember how I got home that night. It was just like I was full of peace and full of joy and full of knowing that he was my good shepherd. And anyway, so I got home, and because my son had gone out, and I'd got into bed, and my other son was with me, and he put all these duvets on me. He's like, "You're going to be all right, Mum. You don't know what had happened. I'm going to be all right, Mum." And I just got a verse. I got a verse, my Bible, and it was Ezekiel 36, and I had no idea, absolutely. I said, "Go and get my Bible. Go and get my Bible." And it was Ezekiel 36, and it said, I'm very good at looking for things when I'm talking. I get all panicky. Oh, here we are. Wait a minute. I've got it. And I will give you a new heart. And I will give you a new heart. I will give you a new right desires and put a new spirit within you. I will take out your stony heart of sin and give you new hearts of love. And I will put my spirit within you so that you will obey my laws and do whatever I command.
Wonderful.
And also in another bit it said, Psalm 37, I will gather my sheep on a dark and stormy night. Wonderful. And I was just like, wow, you know, and it changed me. I had the Holy Spirit within me. I knew I was a Christian. Yeah. And the word of God came alive to me, the Living Bible. And I just knew that God loved me, and the fear gone, everything just, yeah. You know. And so I just started to pray, started to sing, like my friends were doing, and yeah. And we went to a spring harvest and a Christian holiday that we'd already booked. And when I got there, I was like, oh no, I can't, you know, it was still sort of new and that, and they, yes, you can, and they dragged me down to the singing, you know, and all that, and I just worshipped God and just rejoiced. And then I met my husband, came out of prison. I'd been praying for another guy that had gone in. We had a halfway house on our road, which when I became a Christian, you know, my heart went out to these guys because nobody was caring for them. They were coming out of prison and the guy would knock, you know, the support worker, and then just wander off, and they were broken, you know. And
yeah, quite most prisoners have been abused, haven't they? That's a fact.
Yes,
most of them
yes.
suffered from some sort of abuse. I think
yes.
A huge percentage of them as children.
Yes.
Yeah,
as children.
yeah.
Yes, most, and I think every single prisoner that we've worked with has been abused when they were young, that we know.
Yeah,
you know, that my because we started working together with my husband, and instead of fostering, we were, you know, older men that had been broken, you know, and we had Sunday suppers, and we had Manor House, which is a drop-in centre, and a lot of the guys have been in prison, you know.
So how did you meet your second husband then? So how did that come about then?
He came to church.
Yeah.
Well, what happened was his heart was for Kendal or Cumbria, and God had really led him to come here. And Bob, who had known him, lives here in Kendal, so he said, "Well, we'll find you somewhere." And when Bob told us this man was coming out of prison, us girls, you know, like you do, you want to make a nice flat, and so we went and shopped and made a beautiful home for him, his flat, and slowly God put it on our hearts that we loved each other. And
when was this, Jane? What year was this?
This was 2004.
Okay.
So I'd been 7 years sort of on my own. It was still a bit difficult with my younger son. He has got mental disability. I'd say it's not, you know, he's not been diagnosed properly. You know what the mental health teams are like. But he's a lovely, lovely boy, and I love him to bits. But he really struggled with. Yeah, he's on the scale, and he really struggled with another man coming in. But I mean, he came round. You know, he's fine now. Anyway, so so we. My husband joined Manor House, which is a homeless drop-in centre sort of for people that were on the streets. A lot of them have been in prison. We had the halfway house across the road that we cared for people. It got too much, and the police got involved because our house was an open house, and Mark was working at and they all knew where we were. We were on an estate. I was running a toddler group, so I was working with single mums, helping mums learn to love, and because a lot of the mums haven't been mothered. And this is my point about what they're doing now, is that just with this little bit of help, just a little bit of support, these girls make fantastic mums. The best mums. You know, we did little cooking times. We had the health visitor come out once a month. We worked together as a team on the estate, and there were other Christians too, working with the single mums. And none of us got paid. We were community.
So there was quite a lot going on then between the toddler group helping mums and then the halfway house and everything like that.
Yes. And in the end, they moved us off the estate. Well, my daughter was 3. I had my daughter 2006, and it was the right time to move. Because it was a very difficult, it would have been difficult if we had with a child. And where we live now is 6 miles out, and it's absolutely lovely for her. So I know God was taking care of my daughter as well, and looking after us, because we needed our space too.
You moved 6-7 miles away, and so there was your new husband and then your 3 children.
Yes, and then we're up to date really, because this is when my son, he was working in Kendal as a chef. Fantastic chef. He was head chef, and he met a lady here who straight away whisked him away. He was head over heels. And she was Italian, and she took him to Italy and promised him the earth. Her father's very, very, very rich, and he was just thought he was going to have his own restaurant over there or something. Or I met her 2 or 3 times, but because we were out here and he was in Kendal, and I was working part-time because I had Grace. And anyway, so so he went to Italy, and then when they came back, things didn't work out there. They went down to another town down south. I won't mention the town.
And when was this? Sorry, just to keep on.
This was I'm sorry, I keep thinking. This was I think they came back. I won't say names. I'm trying to think of the children's ages, because that makes it. So it was 8 years ago.
Okay, right. Yeah. So like 2012-ish.
Yes, it was 13. About that time. 2013. So what we did was we used to go and visit. We used to take long weekends and go and visit, and everything seemed fine. She was very well presented. She was very well spoken, had morals. I felt comfortable really with her. There was a little bit of control, when we could go out and who we went out with, and couldn't go out all together, and things like little things. But I just thought, well, she's a bit of a nervous mum. I put everything down to different things, like you do, because if you've never experienced anything, you don't look out for it, do you? So you just don't know. Anyway, so that happened for a few years, where we'd go down, and then in 2018 we had our first family holiday together, which was allowed, and it was going back to the village where we used to live in Greece.
Have they had children at this point, by the way? Your son?
Yes, they'd had that's why we were going down to see. Yes, sorry.
Yeah. So how old were the children then?
They were so while we were going down, there were babies, toddlers. And then when we went away all together for 2 weeks, we hired a villa, and we rented a villa, and we went for so they were 4 and 5 or 5 and 6.
So that's the
Yeah.
age we were in
I'm
2018.
not very good at remembering. Yes, numbers. Sorry.
Just to give a rough
So yeah, we went away, and I took my friend with me, friend and client, because I was caring for her, and we went all together, huge big villa, and little things started sort of coming out. And she joined the police, and we all believed she was a police officer, even my son.
Yeah.
And there were certain things that just didn't, there were things that she was saying that just didn't seem bizarre, and there was,
give us an example of what she.
well, it was like the department she was in, and she said that her and another girl a young girl had gone and rescued people from barns and all sorts of, and it's just bizarre stories she told us. And anyway, so I still believe she was a police officer. And by that time, she was in anti-terrorism because she spoke 9 languages, and we were so proud of her. She was on 60,000. My son was had got his own business by then, on eBay, selling fine watches. He'd built his way up and had got very, very well. He was earning quite a lot of money. And I didn't think, because they had money to spend, I just thought, she's got this amazing job in the police. She said that she was heading for MI5 eventually, wanted to work with MI5. Anyway, so things happened on the holiday that just seemed a bit strange. But on the last night of our holiday, me and my son, we were the last 2 up. Everybody, I thought, had gone to bed, and he just broke down and told me what his life was really like, that she'd stopped him going out to work, that she controlled all the money. He wasn't allowed anything unless she had, she monitored his emails. He wasn't allowed on Facebook. He wasn't allowed to go to the school. If he did go to the school and he happened to be in the car, he had to stay in the car. And it just was heartbreaking to know what he'd been suffering for so long. And yet, but he was a fantastic dad. She didn't mother. She didn't, and that's something I noticed on holiday. One of the little ones had been poorly and had a bit of a temperature, so I knew where the doctor was, because it was the children's doctor when we were there. So we went to the doctor, and she sort of just stood bolt upright in the middle of the room, whereas a mother's instinct would be to, go and I did that because it was a stranger poking about at him, you know what I mean? Yeah. And it was things like that, little things, and I thought, she's not mothering. She doesn't, she's not, it's not normal, the way she is with the children. So, so, I mean, he did everything in the house for them. He cooked for them, he did their packed lunches, he did their projects from school, he did, and he was just fantastic. And they loved him to bits, absolutely. It was daddy this, daddy that, daddy. And they didn't speak Italian, which is the mother language. So they didn't speak it because she wasn't speaking to them. This was one of our things about the court, when that happened. So anyway, so I said, well, you need to go and talk to somebody. You can't carry on like this, because it's not healthy, and it's not healthy for the children. Because if she said that she shouts and shouts and shouts in the house, tirades for hours and hours and hours. And I said, well, that's not healthy for the children. You've got to stop that. He said, how can I stop it? I said, well, record it and go to the authorities, which I thought would stop everything. Well, she had met the solicitor. I should cut a long story short. She met the solicitor before we got the solicitor. We didn't know. She knew the solicitor. She took us on. There was 3 solicitors in that town, and 2 of them said there was conflict of interest. And she'd met the solicitor in a drop-in centre for domestic abuse victims, where she'd gone.
So she'd
saying
gone like declaring
where
the
she
truth.
had gone, and then she'd come home with the book and start hitting him on the head and said, "This is you, this is you," you know. And she'd threaten him that if he ever went to the police, that she is the police now.
Oh.
So she'd made a network of people that would, you know, if he ever went to the police, he couldn't. Yeah. So what this is what I found.
You've just lost you, Jane. I don't know if you can
Oh,
hear.
sorry.
It just the screen just froze then for a few seconds.
Okay. Yeah. So, you know, it was all sort of set up beforehand, really.
Right. Yeah.
She
was
had
well
made connections. She was very clever.
Yeah.
Very, very clever. She'd she'd been introduced to a police officer, 2 police officers that knew the solicitor. When we went to the emergency court hearing,
how did it go to emergency court hearing then? How did that happen?
Right. Well, my son said, "I'm going to come out now." He went to the police.
Yeah.
He went to the police. He reported it. And then she stayed in the home for another month. And she was saying to him, "If you stop all of this, if you stop this, we'll just go back to normal. If you don't, I'll take the children. You'll never see them again." She was threatening him, you know, to stop what he was doing, you know, trying to prosecute her. Yeah. But the police just would refuse to take the report.
Right.
Yeah. Within days of him reporting it, they were saying, "No, we're not going to look at it. There's not enough evidence." They wouldn't take the recordings.
Right. Yeah.
It was all corrupt. Yeah. Completely corrupt. She'd actually worked in the department, the vulnerable adults department. So she knew the officers that were there. But we found out 6 months later that she'd never been a police officer. She was just a civilian volunteer. She wasn't even a special constable.
That's me.
She used to go short skirts and my son thought, "Oh, she gets changed into a police officer's," but she was going looking like she just, you know. Anyway, we won't judge. Anyway, so then my son said, "I'm going to the school." He started going out. You know, he got brave because he'd been to the police. He couldn't carry on. You know, he needed to do something. So it's a very strange time between you know. And he said, "I'm going to go to the school and tell them what's been happening and what's continuing to happen. Because I'm going to the school now, I'm going to the parents' meetings, I'm going." And that's when she left. Because she knew that, you know, she falsely accused my son. She said she had police protection, but she didn't. She had none of that because they all knew who was, you know, the true abuser. But she got a house round the corner, and the emergency court was, it was all for them staying in the family home. Coming back by that point because she took them, but there was an emergency.
Who made the application to? How did it get to emergency court hearing? Who had made that application? Was it your son?
I think. No, he had.
Or was it the social services who had made that?
Well,
or the police?
We didn't really know because these 2 people came on that day, on the day that he was going to go to school. 2 social workers came, but social services said they had no record of that.
Oh, right.
Them coming and taking the children out, no record. So we don't know who they were. We believe they were 2 police officers that she knew, you know. So then my son, you know, went to court. He was defendant? I don't know. Well, I don't know how it works.
There's the applicant and the respondent. So
applicant, yes. Yeah. He was to bring them back, you know.
So these two people came in and whisked the children out of school.
Yes. No, not out of school, from the home. They she'd been arrested. She had that on that day. I don't want to get into a lot of detail because it's very complicated. But on that day, she'd rung. No, my son had rung the police because she'd been dragging the children about. So he called the police because he'd said he's going to the school. She'd started getting violent with the children again. So he called the police, and they did arrest her that day, but then released her because those two officers didn't know that she knew, and then they were released. She was released, but my son had gone and picked them up from school, and then two social workers, which he thought, came and took the children.
Oh my goodness.
After he picked them up from school. But social services have no record of that. So we don't know who they were.
Yeah.
We don't know who they were. So then we had the emergency court, and it was all going fine. They were saying the children are settled, he's their primary carer. Yeah. And an email came in while the court was happening from Kafkas. And then it just had all these lies, complete and utter lies about my son. And he came out, he was literally, I had to pick him up off the floor. He was just absolutely, he was just in shock. And the solicitor hadn't gone with him. She'd said that one of her family was in hospital or something, but we knew she was, we didn't know at the time she was corrupt.
Oh gosh.
And the social worker I'd found out that week after that happened that the social worker that they used, a 73-year-old social worker, had a past. He had run a trust, and they had been caught trafficking boys.
Goodness me.
I know. And so we got rid of him and got another one, and she was great. And she was saying, oh, I'm my own person, and I will do the right thing for your, for this situation.
And in the meantime, were children in like temporary foster care or something?
No, they were with the mother on their own.
Okay.
With the mother.
Right.
Just round the corner. Right. And it took us about 8 weeks to see them. And then when we did get contact, it was just like, and they were just begging to go. They were begging the teacher. They were begging, they were begging people to go back home. And every time a social worker saw them, they're saying, we want to go back to daddy. We want to go back to daddy, because they were being abused. And there was nobody there to stop it, because he would stop it. He would stand between them, So anyway, we had the final court hearing, and it was for them to come back to daddy. The social worker had put it in her Section 7 report that the children's wants and wishes, and they had recognised psychological abuse at least. So we were very confident at that point that they were going to be coming back. Yeah. We didn't know about the solicitor at that point. It was only after myself and my husband, we had doubts about her because she wasn't going to anything. She was, it was like she was against us and not for us. It was like she was doing all the right stuff but not doing all the right stuff. And it was my husband, because he's dealt with solicitors and things, and he said there's something wrong with her, but I was like, don't be silly, she's a solicitor, you didn't. Anyway, so the final court hearing, this is like months later, because she kept doing things to put like stumbling blocks in the way. She'd said, it was like false accusations all the way through for months. So it was like another one, and there were like these courts, and I had no idea. I just thought, goodness me, why do we have to keep going? She was saying that he was having an affair with a social worker. And then she took pictures. She was stalking and harassment. She was taking pictures of my son, and I'd introduce, I did try to introduce him to a network because I'd been going to church there. And so she was taking pictures of him with new friends, and saying that it was a social worker. And then she took, it's not funny really, but she took a picture of one of the girls that she'd seen Costas with, a friend, and while the social worker was stood there saying, "This is the social worker," and the judge is like, "That's not the social worker," and just throwing it out.
Yeah.
And it was like little things like that. She kept bringing it back to court to extend it, Anyway, so just after the final hearing, they managed to stop it again. They said that they'd seen one of the neighbours, who she'd got all the neighbours on her side as well, so she could use them. But in a way where they didn't really want to be used, But one of the neighbours had seen my son smoking a spliff on the path outside his house, which he doesn't do.
So what if he did? That doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, but it stopped the court again. And 2 weeks later, she abducted the children because she knew. Well, I don't know because since then, I found out that they all knew each other. The detective inspector, the sergeant, the solicitor, and others that I know now, they were all in the same satanic cult down there.
Oh, goodness.
The solicitor, I found out through, I can't really, it was a retired gentleman, I'll say, from one of the authorities who spoke to me. I had cried out to help lots and lots of people, the commissioner, anybody that I could think that would listen to us, at the point of, I was just emailing, and my son was emailing anybody, even people on the radio, and we thought, oh, Kent, wherever it is, I was emailing, Essex, and all those areas around there.
It sounds very familiar. You just, when you're innocent, you're just reaching out for help for that. Yes. Somebody is going to listen, somebody's going to help, you're just desperate just to get
and you can't believe it when people just don't help, it's just like, what's going on? But now I know, because they're all under this sort of oath. There's an oath that they can't break. And this man, for me, this man who helped me and told me, broke an oath. Although he was retired from, he was still, and he said, this is what none of them can go against. It's so demonic and they're so trapped, and it's like there's the levels of authority. That they can't go against one another. And so when I realized that, you can't go, and I didn't know all of this at the time. I've learned this since looking into it all, Anyway, she disappeared, and that the police told us that she'd gone to Italy with the children. And we believed that for a long time. My son's here, and I can hear his talk and that. But, this bit is, it's hard because I know they're not in Italy. I know they're not there. And I know from 2 family members over there. I know from a church that's helped me over there because I've been wanting them monitored. We can't go over. Her father owns a large, I won't tell you which town, a very large solicitors firm in a very corrupt city. And so we can't just go over and go, hi, we want to come and, it's dangerous. And they knew that, and the solicitor knew that, and the police knew that. So it's like we've got all these people against us, So I asked for a welfare check through ICACU, which is the independent children's unit. Asked for a welfare check, and I got 2 laws that said yes, I could, as a grandmother, ask for a welfare check, and they were refused twice. Twice I asked, and the courts refused it. The second time they said they had a guardian checking on them, which, why would they need one if they had a mother that was looking after them? You know, I don't know that. So anyway, 3 weeks ago, my son has been broken. Yes, he has drank, and he has, you know, he's done it to numb the pain because he was broken.
Yeah.
Absolutely broken.
Just bear with me
Anyway,
a second. Sorry, Jane, the cat's scratching to get out of the... I'll be back in a sec, sorry. Sorry about that.
So anyway, where we're at now is that he's come home. He's come back up north, where the love is.
Yeah.
And he's doing really well, really well. And he's got a lovely partner called Life. I won't say the name. Lovely partner who's given him life, and we're getting there, you know. So now I've got him here, I can start the process, you know, because a lot of it I can't do because I'm grandmother.
Yeah.
But he's here, and we're starting civil actions.
There must be some
against all the authorities involved.
Yeah.
We have a barrister that came to a high court, one of the high courts, and she's done a statement and said that she could see, she read the bundle, and she said she could see misconduct and falsehoods and misleading and everything in the 8 hours it took her to read the bundle the day before. She said she could see from all authorities involved there had been corruption and false. So we've got that that bundle's there, and a barrister's told us, and we're just ready to go now. We want to know, all we want is to know where the children are. We want to know.
So have you not seen them? Have your son not seen them since they were taken in 2018 when she moved?
2019.
2019.
Yeah, we had contacts. My last contact was the day before she abducted them.
Okay.
It was Father's Day.
If somebody, you know, if a parent abducts, normally
it's a crime report.
They'd get them back, you know, especially in a tradition country, they'd extradite them back. So it's like, well, who's protecting?
Well, we had the court order that said, the court order said they had been illegally removed from the country. And we put it into Kent. I went down to my son and we took it into the police station, and they pretended that they'd sent it to the what's it called? CRS or something. They said they'd sent it, and they hadn't. They'd filed it the day that we gave it in, the crime report of abduction. They filed it on the same day. They filed it. And the review, we put in a complaint, and they haven't even done the complaint. 3 years a complaint's been in. And the IOPC say that they can't take it on until the police have finished with it. And so we're in that situation. But now I've done all the emails now saying we want to know where it's at, you know, because I've got my son here. I can do that. I couldn't do any of that, you know. And I've just been praying for him to come out of the fog and the, you know.
It's just horrible.
So that's where we're at.
It seems to be whenever like a safe parent removes a child to safety, like say if they've got an abuse, you know, whoever the abuser is, safe, the safe parent removes them, the authorities go after them immediately and bring them back immediately. Do you know what I mean? It's like it seems to be
well, not all. Well, they don't. I mean, when social services are involved, they don't seem to, and you know, they will give them to the abuse. I mean, I just thought we were a one-off.
It seems to be the modus operandi, doesn't it? You know, just against whoever the safe parent is. It really, it's like, you just wouldn't believe it.
Split them up. Give them to the unsafe parent, and then it's easier for them to take them then into care. And that's what. So since then, you know, I mean, that's our case. But since then, oh my goodness, I've just found out so much of the corruption.
Yeah, yeah.
And I know they don't want it spoken about. I've been
Sure.
blocked, and if people share something, it disappears. You know I'm on the right track. I started looking into how this all started, because in the last few years, it's just become more and more that they're not, like I say, you need to help children, families, you know, and support them. And they're not doing that at all.
Yeah,
It's like a section 20 and they're gone.
exactly.
You know, now a section 20 is
Yeah.
when you bring in all the people, all the support, all the charities that are there waiting to help families, you know, like we did and do, you know. And there's none of that. It's like they're just trying to trip the families up to
Yeah,
get the children away.
yeah.
And I'm thinking, my gosh, how many adoptive families are there
Mm.
for all these children? Where on earth are they all going, you know? Because the numbers just didn't add up. When you see how many thousands that are going into care.
Sure.
And I don't know whether people want to. My heart breaks for the families that are thinking that their children are being adopted, because some of them aren't being adopted. You know that, don't you?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, yeah.
And it breaks my heart, because I don't want to be a bearer of bad news. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. It's a shocking, corrupt system.
Absolutely
It sounds like
corrupt.
you've got a lot of, you know, even your barrister say there's corruption there. So the more you can uncover that and the links, the stronger your case and the likeliness of, you know, of getting the boys back. And
yes, well, they are two separate. What's happening now with my research is, I mean, it could just, if it came out, this is genocide.
yeah,
Do you know what I mean?
it's a war against children, isn't it?
It's war against babies, and it is actually eugenics, and it stems from eugenics. All the people at the very top are, and beyond, are depopulation, population control. It is that 1% that is controlling the 99%. And I'm not just saying that sort of off the top of my head. It's I've found the people. You know what I mean? And and nobody, not even the media, not even some of the media that are uncovering truth, you know, in the pandemic and that, want to know. It's too much. So maybe you don't want to know.
I think the pandemic has done a lot in terms of opening up the eyes of people who were oblivious to all of this going on. You know, if something positive has come out of this whole lockdown and the way it's been handled, it's that it's waking more and more people up, and they're more open-minded to things such as satanic ritual abuse, which obviously exists, and corruption within the child protection services.
I mean, when I was in fostering, there were women that were practicing occult and then threatening the children with, you know, that's why they got rid of me here in this county. I knew that there were children, because I was so much in the community. People were coming to me and saying they did this and told me that I would have a spell put on me if I ever told. It was, and I had a number. There wasn't just one. There was a pattern, you know, of people coming and opening up to me about a number of foster carers. But I tried, and they just got rid of me. So I did try, though. Anyway, one of them did disappear. The head, you know, she went off to Scotland. I think they did do something, but anyway, it doesn't matter.
Jane, if anybody wants to contact you, are you available for people to get in touch with? If there's somebody listening who's in a similar predicament as your son was, for example, or
Yes,
with regards
yes,
to
men.
adoption or
Because
anything.
men, I
So,
mean, men, you know, they're so left behind. I watched a thing in the government debate in actually in Westminster, and they just talked about the women, the women all the time, the women that are abused, the women that have their children taken off them. But
yeah.
the men, it's, you know, when you say about men being in prison, men that are homeless, you know, and many of those men, I mean, are men that, you know, they fall like my son did, but they have no one to pick them up. So that it's just like a downward spiral. And it can just stem from having their children, because they love their children, you
Absolutely.
know. And not all men are abusers.
I know, I
You
know.
know, some of them
I,
are fantastic
Of
dads.
course, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's why I never kind of go down the route of, oh, it just happens to, because for me, I could go down the route, oh, it's anti-women, you know, and some, you know, and
Yeah, yeah.
blah blah blah. But it's not. It's a war against
No.
children. It's a war against their
Yes.
parents,
Yes.
and it's
And
full.
they want
It's
men.
full of lies,
Yeah.
corruption, deceit,
Yeah. Yeah.
findings with no
It's a war
evidence.
also against the poor, because my brother worked. My brother was a journalist in the European Parliament. Andy Carling, I can say his name because I'm ever so proud of him, and he passed away in 2018. I looked after him for a year, and one of our a few of our conversations were about politics because that was his thing. And he told me about depopulation. He told me what was coming,
Yeah, yeah.
and he said they're going to shrink back all services and all, you know, and shrink back population. And one time he said to me that he was going to give up on politics anyway and come home, even if he hadn't got cancer, because he said none of the politicians are in control anymore. And my brother was highly intelligent, highly esteemed in the European Parliament. When he passed away, he hadn't been there for about a year and a half, and he was mentioned in the midday briefing, you know, which is a real honour for a
Yeah.
journalist to be, you know, and they said that they'd lost a little bit of their conscience, you know, when they lost Andy. So, you know, he was very intelligent and had his finger on the pulse, and he knew this was coming. Not the virus, but he knew that
Sure, yeah.
depopulation was on its way.
Yeah.
And so I knew, you know, I do know about you know, that this is all part of the plan.
It's a
It's all
rabbit
part of
hole,
the
and once
plan.
you start going down the rabbit hole, it
Mm,
just more and more it comes up, and you know, stuff that is hidden, the truth is
yeah,
coming out, and I think more and more
yeah.
people are waking up. But thanks so
Mm.
much for coming on today,
You're
Jane.
very
Your
welcome.
story, and I wish you all the best. And I
Thank
pray that,
you.
you know, I'll be praying and pray that those
Thank you.
gorgeous little boys, beautiful little boys, are
Well, I'll just say something. When I was in a church down south, they didn't know me. Nobody knew me. I was sat at the back, and a lady stood up, and she said, and remember that my testimony is about sheep. She said, there's somebody here, and her head was like at the back, you know, I couldn't see her face or anything. And she said, God's put something on my heart. And she said, there's somebody here that's lost their little lambs.
oh,
And she said, I was just like, ears pricked up, crying. I just cried all the time. I was just lost in tears. And she said, I want you to know, God wants you to know that the Good Shepherd is holding them in his arms.
oh wow.
And the hope of that has stayed with me for all this time, that no matter where our children are, God can be there with them. You
Amen.
know, and for you too, Samantha,
Yeah,
you know, for
absolutely.
you too. I mean, he's a God that can even take pain away, take hurt away, you know, he can do anything.
Amen.
And yeah, and we have the hope of heaven. When you
Absolutely.
think about how, you know, how short a time we have on earth,
Yeah.
and how we will have eternity on a new earth, you know, and we have all of that to look forward to. That's our joy.
Absolutely.
Even in the pain and the suffering, we have that joy
Yeah,
to
we
know
do. We do.
that he has the victory in the end, and not the devil.
Amen.
Sorry to keep you.
No, don't. Thanks so much, Jane. God bless you. And
God bless.
speak to you
Bye
soon.
bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.